Good morning, everyone. My name is Veronika Krasnichan, and I'm happy to see you all here today. Today we have met because we organized this panel discussion, which is about academic integrity and artificial intelligence in this field. And I'm really happy to welcome our panelists. But first of all, I will take the opportunity to also welcome attendees from the Georgian National Conference, because I'm happy to have these participants also here. And yeah, let's start with the panelists. I'm happy to see here Tomas Foltynek, the assistant professor from Department of Machine Learning and Data Processing, Faculty of Informatics from Masaryk University in Brno, and also ENAI president. Also, we have here Mike. Also, we have here Mike Perkins, who is Associate Professor and Head of Center for Research and Innovation, British University in Vietnam. We have here Mary Davis, Professor and Academic Integrity Lead from Oxford Brookes University, UK. And Roger Larsen, co-founder and CEO of NorEducation, which is a company which aspires to shift focus from confirming honesty away from detecting cheating by verifying authenticity of students' work. Hello and welcome all. So I'll start this panel by my questions, but if you have any question during the session, please, all the participants, I would love to encourage you to use the Q&A option. And we will start with the first introductory question, because I would like to know what first got you interested in academic integrity and what inspired you to get actively involved in this field. Tomas, can you start?
Okay, yeah. So my motivation to join this the community of academic integrity, or the community of people who are promoting academic integrity, was through plagiarism detection. Because as a computer scientist, I found this as an interesting problem from the perspective of computer science, natural language processing, and that parts. But then I realized that it's not only that technical part, that the educational point of view and the point of view of policies is much more important actually than the technology as such. So then I moved towards this policy point of view and started talking about academic integrity rather than plagiarism detection.
Thank you. Mike, could you be the next?
Sure. So for me, this was from a previous role in my institution. I was in charge of quality and academic development, which involved supporting faculty and students in ensuring we had appropriate levels of quality inside the university. So a lot of this was we had identified issues with students not acting with integrity in several different cases. And this got me interested in carrying out a little bit more research in the area. And my research interests generally shifted around into this area of academic integrity, and now a little bit more focused on the artificial intelligence and academic integrity side, which just happened as a connection for me just before ChatGPT was released, actually. So this was something that just happened to be at the right sort of time.
Thank you. Roger, what about you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. Well, I guess I've always been working in the fringe zone between academia and the commercial world. And what I always, for many, many years, been thinking is that why are we so possessed by detecting cheating? I've wanted always to kind of find a way to confirm honesty. Can we have a different approach to the whole question and redefine the space? So that's been on my mind for 2 decades, actually. So I've been kind of trying to figure out how can we approach academic integrity in a positive way by putting honesty in the forefront. And so when the transformers technology arrived and the T in ChatGPT some years ago, me and the data scientists that I'm working closely with, we actually came to the observation that this is going to be a ghostwriter. This is going to be the amazing ghostwriter that can write text. So how can we now use the opportunity of finding a positive approach to academic integrity while addressing the new challenge to academic integrity as a consequence of this new ghostwriter that is released into the world? So that's the inspiration behind the work we're doing.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks. And very interesting, because I can see that I have some points in common with all the panelists, but especially Tomas. So I started my academic integrity journey nearly 20 years ago, basically to respond to student feedback. Students said to me that they had a lot of doubts about how they were using sources, how they were constructing their assignments and making use of source material. And I thought, oh, there's this technology that's just starting to be used at the time, Turnitin. I was an early adopter of Turnitin when very few people were using that technology. I had to ask for a special license, I remember, in my institution. But I didn't want to use it for plagiarism detection purposes. I wanted to move away from this and focus on student learning. So I used it for formative purposes. So with drafts, to try to help students to understand what they were doing and how they were using sources and how they could learn from the Turnitin reports. And I can say that since that point, nearly 20 years ago, I've kept that my focus. I want to focus on education for students, not trying to catch them, not trying to punish them, but to help them with their learning. And that's my goal with academic integrity.
That's amazing motivation. Thank you very much, Mary, for sharing this. Since we have over 140 participations here, I would really like to ask you to use the Q&A tool if you are going to have any questions. And we can start and not start, we can move on and start talking much more about the AI. I'll start with Tomas. Could you please provide us with a brief overview of what AI is currently capable of in context of higher education? Because if there are some people who are not so familiar about what is going on here and now, could you just provide us a brief overview?
Okay, yeah, thank you for the for this question. I think that very important aspect is to understand that AI in education is nothing new. Like we have been, we are having these technologies in education for decades. Like I recently did some review on that because of one research paper. So I learned about what was here even before I was born. So the developments started in 1950s or even 1940s with the developments of computers. Yeah, so when people were developing computers, they were also thinking how to use computers in education, and the same is for AI. So first conference on AI in education took place already in 1983. And International Journal of Artificial Intelligence in Education was founded in 1989. So we are talking about like 30, 40 years ago. And within this period, the technology focused most on like learning, prediction, detection, and prediction of student behavior rather in large scale, and also intelligent tutoring systems that focused on personalized learning. So the system that would monitor and analyze how students learn and typically recommend the tasks and recommend the questions that are suitable for the level of that student understanding. Now we are experiencing like much larger hype than it used to be before. Like if we organized a webinar on artificial intelligence in education 5 years ago, I don't think it would attract 300 participants. Yeah? It was something that the computer scientists and educational professionals were interested in, but not the large academic community as it is now. So the recent developments of large language models allowed for several things. First, it's more efficient searching and more efficient information retriever. If you are familiar with tools like Wolfram Alpha, so on one hand, it's a huge knowledge base from mathematics, physics, social sciences, history, and so on. But it allows you to communicate in natural language. Yeah, and that's language model behind that can translate the question into the query to the knowledge base. So you don't have to use it like Google. You can more or less conversate in natural language. And also, what now is possible is the dream of the scientists developing the tools for several decades ago, and these are the personal learning assistants. Yeah, with ChatGPT or similar tools, with right prompt, you can use it as a learning partner, so each student can get a personal tutor. There are already some chatbots tailored directly to this purpose, like Khanmigo from Khan Academy, which is programmed specifically to serve as the learning assistant. And the third aspect that I think creates the most of the hype is that these language models are able to mimic what we call high order thinking and perform tasks that educators are used to use for assessment. Yeah, and that's where a lot of people see the threat of academic integrity, because we can't trust the assessment anymore, and we can't trust that we are assessing the product of the student or the product of the artificial intelligence. So this is what have been what have happened so far, and when it comes to future, I will let me share my screen. I will show you this chart. It's called a hype curve or hype cycle. Yeah, the idea comes from Gartner, the advisory company, and it's a hype cycle of generative artificial intelligence. And if we look at large language models, they are somewhere here. Yeah. So what is like the general performance or general hype around any new technology? First, there is some innovation trigger, and people expect a lot from these technologies. That's what we have been experiencing now in past 2 years. Now, what they predict, and I strongly agree with them, people will figure out that the expectations were maybe too much. We expected, we overly expected what large language models are capable, not only in education, but in other areas as well. And the expectations are supposed to drop now to so-called throw of disillusionment. But then the developers keep working on the technology. They will keep improving language models. They will keep improving the applications that are built on top of that models. So then gradually we realize what the technologies are good for, what they are not good for, and we reach finally some stability, some plateau of productivity, where this technology become part of everyday life, and everybody will be used to them, and that's what we can expect in the next decade. Yeah, Gartner expects reaching plateau of productivity in some 4 or 5 years, and I think that that's pretty reasonable prediction.
Thank you very much, Tomas. We will switch to another question, and I would like to ask Roger, from your perspective, what do you see as the most significant opportunity that AI presents for universities today? And also, if we are talking about the opportunities, let's talk about the challenges we can face in its adoption.
Thank you for that, Veronica. Yes, as Tomas shared with us, we as a species have a tendency to, in the short term, overestimate the value of a new technology, whereas in the long term, we have a tendency to underestimate its long-term impact. So when thinking about the long-term impact, I think the biggest impact will be that this is a technology that gives promise of a true adaptive learning approach. We tried that for decades, but we really succeeded for it. If we could use Gen AI to adapt the learning more, it means we will have more inclusion, and particularly those with special educational needs will be included in a better way. So I think and hope that that is the long-term impact after the hype curve is coming down. But you mentioned also that while those are violently positive impacts, we should be very mindful of the other side of it, which is the assessment security side, which is impacting academic integrity as we speak quite massively. So I think universities need to take a stand on this and start by actually implementing that through their policies, updating their policies on it. But that's not enough. There need to be tooling. Like Marion mentioned, a tool came along when the web came as a new innovation some 30 years ago, and plagiarism exploded. Plagiarism not being an new problem, it was an old problem that exploded as a consequence of a new technology being come in, and then we got tools to mitigate against that threat. And similarly, I think we need to have new type of tools, new type of methods to mitigate against the assessment security issues that Gen AI is introducing to us.
Thank you very much, Roger. Anyone from the panelists wants to add anything? Okay, so let's switch to Mary. Mary, please tell me how important it is to involve various stakeholders, including students, faculty, and technology experts, in discussion and development of AI usage and AI usage policies and so on.
Okay, thanks, Veronica. So I subscribe to the maxim, nothing about us without us. It's never been more important now, especially to involve students in any policies about what they're doing. So that it is so crucial to our approach to artificial intelligence. I think from an educator perspective, we really have to try and keep up with student practices. And for many educators, that's really difficult. So if you're not a computer scientist or someone who is always using the latest technology, it's very likely that you as an educator are a bit behind what your students are doing. So the only way to make things relevant, useful, effective for students is to work with students and get feedback from students about their practices to see, what you can do that will work for them. So I'll just explain a bit about what I've done at Oxford Brookes. So we developed a declaration form to ask students to declare their use of artificial intelligence with every assessment anytime that they're using it. And then based on my analysis of all of these declarations, I developed a course to try to help students with ethical decision making when they're using AI. So using a traffic light model, I categorized the kinds of practices into appropriate, inappropriate, and the middle area that is at risk, and designed an exercise for students to check their learning. But what I recognize through doing that is it's not as if I can create some training and then the problem is fixed, because with AI, things keep changing. So what I have done is created a research project to involve students through getting their evaluations of this course through a questionnaire and through focus groups and sort of continuous monitoring of practice to then redevelop that course, revise it, take into account changes such as some initial advice I gave was don't use AI for research. I've really changed that now because I recognize that, there are AI research tools that can be very helpful for a literature review. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the student's not going to do reading and not going to learn about their subject. And coming on to the point you said about the policy. So through doing this work on a resource to teach students, this has actually helped in creating a policy and getting feedback from students to ensure that the policy is fit for purpose. So now we have a policy that establishes what is use of AI and what is misuse of AI. Currently, it will need more adapting. But as I said at the beginning, it's never been more important to involve students, to listen to students, and to keep up with their practices to ensure whatever we're doing is relevant and appropriate for them.
Great. Thank you very much, Mary. I can see that there are some questions from Q&A. I would like to say that we are not getting about you. I'll just leave it to the end of the question I have. So let's shift to Mike. Mike, do you believe that universities should prioritize detecting AI written assignments, or should they shift their focus towards redefining assessment methods? Or is it realistic or necessary to identify AI-generated content in their work? What do you think?
Right, look, so it's we're in October 2024. How do you know that? How can you tell whether or not students have used AI tools in assessments? Every single assessment that you will be looking at from now will have had some sort of influence from AI. Now, whether or not students are admitting that, whether or not they're effectively declaring that, that's a different story. But anything that we see now as educators from students will have had some adjustments made through AI. I think that's and I don't think it's unrealistic for us to assume that and to act accordingly in terms of how we change our assessments. Now, there's been a lot of research that's been done by a wide range of authors, including myself, looking at some of the challenges with AI text detection tools. Firstly, although faculty think that they can spot AI text, most of them can't. Some really great research that came out just recently showing that even though people who were self-declared experts in using AI tools, they couldn't effectively tell whether or not students were really using these. And then the same case with the technologies themselves. Now, when you train a large language model on another large language model and say, are they coming from the same place? Well, yeah, it's fairly easy to say, yes, we can. So when we're talking about general AI text detection, we can get some pretty accurate results. So have students created some text from ChatGPT and put it in their assignments? And we say, this is 90% certain that it's AI generated, fine. But what happens when you make some changes? What happens when you make some adjustments? what we see and what my recent research shows is that the likelihood of your ability to spot this and the detector's ability to spot this really drops dramatically. So what you end up doing is actually, if you're using an AI text detection tool, you are catching the students who have the lowest use of technology. You're catching students who can't afford to buy the subscriptions to the most expensive large language models. You're catching students who are not able to adjust and switch and phase in and out their own writing with AI tools. And what are all these students? Well, these are all the students we need to support. These are all the ones who we need to be focusing on. So if we say we're going to use AI text detection tools, fine, but what are you using them for? Now, if it's a case of you're using them to have a discussion with students about what is and what isn't appropriate in terms of how you should be using AI, in terms of whether that helps your voice or whether that obscures your voice, I think that's a pretty reasonable approach to take. The challenge is, though, that most educators and most institutions aren't set up like that. We don't have these open and frank conversations with students. For many stressed out educators who are marking a big pile of papers, who just see something and it just flashes up 95% AI. Well, how is the average educator going to know that these results are nuanced and that they are not necessarily going to be catching all of the students? We've gotten so used to things, especially like Turnitin, saying this is 90% similarity. And we go, 90% similarity, plagiarism, 0, or move forward through to the academic misconduct panel. But that's not the case with AI text detection. So I think it's really important to think a little bit differently about this. And the biggest way of doing this is probably the hardest thing, and that's changing your style of assessment. What we should be really focusing on is assessment styles that if students use AI tools, that's not obscuring their learning. So how can we change our assessments and support students to use an ethical use of these AI tools, rather than just us using the same old assessments we've always done and just telling students, don't use these AI tools, you're very naughty if you do that. Why should we be putting that responsibility onto them? Surely that's on us as educators. So I think that's an area which we should be really exploring further.
Great, thank you, Mike. I know that Roger has a comment, and I'm pretty sure that Tomas will have comment also. So let's start with Roger.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I totally agree with Mike. AI detectors is not reliable, but I think the main problem is that they don't provide the evidence you need. So whether they are functional or not, it's for me not the question. It's, can you get the evidence out of them, which I haven't seen till date. But I think I want to switch the whole notion that instead of trying to detect AI, it cannot be detected. Let's assume that AI is ghostwriting. And have we ever been able to detect a ghostwriter? I mean, if we were, then commercial contract cheating would have been solved. That's an age-old problem that still exists, and we haven't found any technology to detect ghostwriting. And so if we say that AI writing is ghostwriting, it's just someone else and you writing the text. It doesn't matter if it's a machine or a parrot, a digital parrot that can repeat a lot of text, or whether it's a human writing the text. It's not you. So what if we switch the focus to try to identify your writing? To Mike's point, the authenticity is what matters. Is it your work that we're assessing? So what if we could find a way to authenticate your original writing, as opposed to detect cheating, whether it's plagiarism or AI or ghostwriting or commercial contract cheating? And actually, as it turns out, linguistically, we all have a very strong signature. You can't see it by the naked eye. Even the most trained linguists won't see it. But with the technology at hand now, we are able to identify your signature in the linguistic pattern. And linguistic, it what builds up the language. It's a DNA of language. It's the linguistic. So by going that approach, you're solving contract cheating as well. And to the point of changing the assessment, I don't have an opinion on that because I'm not a pedagogue, but if you're changing assessment to shield yourself from a technology threat, I dare the saying that you're changing it for the wrong reasons. If you're changing it to improve assessment because you're assessing the wrong things, etc., that's a different discussion. It's a pedagogical discussion, but just I'm warning against changing it for the wrong reasons. But regardless of how you assess and what you assess, authenticity in the assessment matters. Is it the student's work you're grading or someone else's work you're grading? That is kind of the main focus. So it comes down to authenticity. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also add that in my opinion, like focusing on the detection part is like that end. It's for me, it's fundamentally wrong direction of thinking. Yeah, I have been always saying that any assessment that is based either solely or mostly on unsupervised homework is just wrong, because you can never be sure that you are assessing the product of the student. Yeah. This is nothing new with AI. As Roger said, the commercial contract cheating have been here for decades or even centuries. And no matter how you discuss the academic integrity issues with your students, if they sign some honesty declaration or whatever, like this may reduce the overall numbers of let's say cheaters, but there always will be certain percentage of students that want the diploma with the lowest possible effort, and this will employ the contract cheater, ghostwriter, AI, whatever, and we have to protect the system against these people. So I acknowledge that written assignments are important part of learning process, and also the take-home assignments when students can focus in a quiet place and write their essay or critically think about the topic. But we can't use it as the only product that we are assessing. Yeah, we have to have some authentic evaluation of learning outcomes then, and this will be very, very difficult in some educational settings. I believe that UK is very prone to this form of cheating because the take-home exams, yeah, not only the essays but also tests that students do at home unsupervised are very common, and yeah, ChatGPT can help them, anyone can help them, and the university doesn't have any guarantee that the diploma they are issuing actually certifies the knowledge of the student.
So Thomas, what would be the alternative then? Are you suggesting that we go back to exams, and that's the approach that some institutions have taken?
Yeah, I would say the supervised exams, because the assessment has to be in supervised environment, because as long as it is unsupervised, you can never be sure that you are assessing the student's knowledge.
If I can come in here, especially as you said, it's a UK problem. Well,
sorry, I didn't mean it's like
no,
there are many other countries that have the same issue.
Yeah. No, I think it's a shared problem. But I really agree with the need to focus on our assessments. Are they fit for purpose? It's something we have to do, because we can't just continue to have assessments where where students could submit work that we can't know if it's really theirs or produced by AI or someone else. The someone else is still going on. We need to remember that it's not always an AI problem. But what I propose and recommend in my institution is elements of oral assessment or performance-based assessment, or assessment that you're actually sort of really directly able to see. So I absolutely agree with you. A take-home assessment and hand in, we can't check student learning, and actually checking or detecting learning is the only thing we should be really focused on. I'm not a fan of detect and punish, detect AI, detect plagiarism. I'm only a fan of detecting learning and making sure that what students are doing on their courses is learning and presenting evidence of their learning. So oral assessment is a really good way of doing that. So if students submit some writing, then asking them questions about it, useful questions, probing questions, maybe in a viva, but there can be other forms of oral assessment, seminars, dialogue discussions, presentations with questions, simulations, and I always promote the work of Monica Ward at City University, Dublin City University in Ireland, who's a real pioneer with interactive oral assessment. Some great ideas there, but I think we need to bring in those elements alongside the writing so that we can then really see, okay, they've submitted this written assessment, but they've also demonstrated their learning in their responses to questions. And maybe Roger would like to come in here, because Roger's demonstrated a way that that can also be assisted through technology.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Mary, for prompting me on that. That's quite right. The work we've been doing is starting with the Viva, that it is kind of the, you can say, a gold standard for assessment, sitting in front of the student and talking with the student to kind of see where their border of knowledge is. And in fact, make sure it's the student you're assessing. And how can it not be when you're sitting and talking to the student and you can ask questions? So if you take that approach and say that's a brilliant approach, but it's hard to scale because it takes time and there's a lot of students and you have to do it, to be fair, you have to do it for everyone. So how can we take that approach and scale it? And that's what we've been trying to do based on a take-home essay that students are writing. When they submit it, we conduct a kind of simulated Viva at the moment of submission. So they upload the essay to the learning platform or the exam platform or wherever they are uploading it and submitting it. And within a few seconds, they get questions from the text they just submitted. And the questions are designed so that it is authenticating their writing. So is it you that wrote the text? If so, you should be able to answer these questions really simple. And you can extend this to actually also start probing their level of knowledge and therefore kind of be some kind of a co-pilot or a help for the teacher to mitigate the problem of scalability of this method. So if you combine this way of talking with the student in way of confirming that it's the student, so authenticity, but also confirming the knowledge, and combine that with comparing the work with previous work of the student, in this case linguistically, and see, is it likely that you have written this? We're not detecting AI, detecting plagiarism. This is not detection, it's a linguistic deep analysis to see if it's your linguistic signature in the paper you submitted compared to your previous work. And now when you combine the two, the linguistic analysis and this simulated oral conversation or the Viva, you will now establish a very strong piece of evidence to whether it is the student's authentic work or not. And this is what I meant by, I have no opinions on whether assessment should be changed and what should be assessed. I think our contribution is, however you choose to assess, we're going to help you make sure it's authentic, that you're assessing the student's work and not someone else's work. And I think, to Mary's point, the Viva-like process is an excellent way of doing that. but in combination with some other things, and making it scale and being automatic, and so that you can apply it for everyone, every time.
Thank you, Roger. I can see that in the chat there is quite a huge conversation about the Viva and oral examination. Mike, I would like to ask you, what do you suggest? Because you were quite laughing about this when you heard Tomas. So please tell me your suggestions.
Yeah, I think changing to going into written exams, I think, is going to be backwards, frankly. Maybe that's just from growing up in the UK educational system, where a significant proportion of work is take-home unsupervised work. But then the majority of the work you do in life is take-home unsupervised work. How much are we preparing students for the future if the only things that we're making them do it to sit in exam halls, and yeah, we have assessment security, but do we have assessment validity? And I think that's where we've got to have these new questions in terms of the of a balance, especially in this new age of Gen AI tools, because if we move down towards this area of assessment security, sure, we can make sure it's the student's own work, and as Roger was saying, we can use other tools. But then the question is, how much do we need to know that it is the student's own work? Now, this is going to sound a bit wild, but we have these AI tools. Why aren't we supporting students to use them effectively? Surely we want to see our students use these tools in the best way possible to help develop their work and help to create something that is new, that is different, that is something else that we haven't actually seen before. We've got this huge opportunity to do this now that we've never had previously. So rather than just us as educators, we're setting the same old assessments to say, write me a case study on this, and great, you get a 70, now that goes in the bin, and nothing happens. Why can't we say to students, well, look, we can do something different here. We can have some sort of assessment which tests their learning in a different way. And it doesn't matter that they've used AI tools, because we've asked them to use AI tools, because it means that they can do more in the same amount of time. So that's why would be cautious of going down the exam route, but I think Vivas can help support that. I've been seeing a lot of noise in the chat about the random Vivas or not. I think random Vivas are totally appropriate, and they don't have to be particularly long. It can just be short conversations. That can be fine to help just give that extra little bit of a layer of support. But as has been mentioned already, there's no way to prevent students from cheating if students want to cheat. Contract cheating's been around for so long. We can't stop that effectively. So we've got to be aware of how we might have this balance between assessment security and assessment validity. And I think this is now a really good time to start thinking about things like that.
Thank you, Mike. I can see that there are some questions. If you can suggest something else than the home exams, but I think it's quite hard to say, because different fields, different topics, different styles of teaching and so on. But could you please tell me what might help? What do you think might help to open the culture of AI literacy, the openness, and so on? Because I can sense some fear. And so how we can foster the culture of AI literacy and openness.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tricky, but a lot of that comes down to training and familiarity with the tools. And what I found from providing training to my own faculty is that people are unsure. They're scared of using these tools, and we have to get people to recognize that these aren't scary things, that they can be supportive for people's own practices, and but they have to be, people have got to play with them. People have got to understand how they're actually going to be used. So I think in terms of supporting AI literacy, we as educators need to be familiar with these tools. Now, out of all of the 159 participants here, I think everybody's interested in this topic. But has everybody tried using these tools for an educational purpose? If not, why not? Give it a try. see how you might help support your students using those, because without that, we can't support AI literacy with our students if we're not familiar with that ourselves.
Yeah, and if I may add to this, like when the students become graduates, they will be using these AI tools in their jobs. Like it will become common. And for example, at my faculty, we are now thinking about how to teach the introduction to programming with the help of AI tools, because that's what the future developers will be doing. Now that the development companies, they're all using some sorts of co-pilots, and we have to teach students how to program with the help of these co-pilots. So we don't have to teach them the fundamentals of syntax and so on. We have to teach them how to adjust the code produced by the co-pilot, so it actually leads to higher order thinking, to thinking about how to test the code, how to test whether the code is secure enough, because we know that the models learned from Stack Overflow and other discussions forum produce the less secure code. So there are completely different tasks that the students have to learn to deal with. And what we are thinking of is how the learning reflects their future professional practice.
Thank you, Tomas. I would like to switch our focus to not from AI, but to another really important topic, and Mike already talked about this. And I would like to ask Veri, because she is our expert in accessibility and inclusion, in what ways can AI technologies improve accessibility for students with disabilities in higher education? If there are any specific tools, application, what do you think might help?
Thanks, Veronica. And yeah, I think Mike articulated really well the importance of looking at digital inequity and issues for any students who may be left behind. I think one thing I would just include as well in Mike's list of the students who may be most disadvantaged is also students with poor internet connections or no internet connection, because yeah, I mean, there are especially some countries, and I just give a statistic because it's a country that I've done a bit of work in, Uganda. There's only a 10% of the population who have access to the internet. So imagine what that does to access to AI and you know, the sort of ability of the country to keep up with technology. But returning to your question, so AI can offer a lot of advantages to students who need additional support, whether it's from something like a specific learning difficulty, dyslexia. We've had Grammarly around for a long time, but of course Grammarly's had quite a revamp with AI and now comes under the umbrella of AI. It is categorized as an AI tool. And you know, a tool like that can help with proofreading, checking grammar. Of course, it can now also be used for the purposes that we don't want students to be using AI tools, which is really taking over their assignment so that the student is no longer the author. Quite a few of us have mentioned, I think, that AI as a tool can be really useful to support learning. AI as an author, well, I think only in a very specific setting where that's somehow a goal. But AI as a tool can be very important to support students with additional needs. So the things that AI now offers could be yeah, helping with linguistic difficulty, helping with translation Now there's a can of worms that might open there. Is it appropriate for students who are studying in another language to be actively using something like DeepL for their assignments? But I mean, if it is used with guidance and for specific purposes, I would argue why not? And then students who struggle to paraphrase, which I think is a very common problem. We've got tools that might be assisting with paraphrasing, summarizing. But then there are other things for students with a disability. Voice to text tools have really surged. So there's more opportunities to get different formats of resources or working in different ways. And I think that's very positive for accessibility. At the same time, we really have to be aware that students may have further needs that aren't kind of automatically solved by having AI tools around, and we really do need to support them. So yeah, just going back to Mike's list of those students, the students who just may not have developed skills in using technology, we really need to support them more so that they're not at a disadvantage, or if they can't afford the technology, then universities have really got to look at, if we want them to use AI, if there are useful tools for them to use, that's going to support them with any disability or disadvantage or difficulty, then universities have really got to look at funding them, and that's another contentious area. So I think there's opportunities and threats here for accessibility overall, but hopefully more opportunities, maybe as we get beyond that hype area on Thomas's graph and into the plateau of productivity, wasn't it? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mary. We have last few minutes. I would like to add one more question about acknowledging AI or citing AI in research papers. Could you give us your thoughts about this? I know that it might be a huge conversation, but just, give us your view if it might look like the paper is not valid at all because there is AI used and they are confirming it. Just let me know what you think about this. Tomas, could you start?
Yeah. So first of all, we all agree, I believe, that AI can't be an author. So we are acknowledging the contribution of AI, not stating it as an author or co-author. And even though now it's an ethical requirement to transparently declare any use of AI technology, I believe that this requirement will gradually become less and less important, because as the tool, everybody will be used to using these tools. It will be as common as using a text editor, which we are not acknowledging now, or the statistical tool, which we see acknowledged in some papers, but some papers don't bother acknowledging that. So I think that the requirement will be smaller and smaller, and it also, I believe that the researchers will not be willing to as much transparency as we may require, because when you acknowledge use of AI, the reviewers might be more suspicious about the content. So actually, like, following the rules here is not beneficial for the people, because the chances of acceptance are lower. So even though I agree that it is good idea to transparently acknowledge everything that you are using, but I also believe that this requirement vanishes during the time.
What about you, Mike? You are also writing about AI. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm writing about AI, but also using AI in my writing, and I'm very transparent in all of my pieces that I write, talking about the extent that AI has supported my work. Again, as Tomas was saying, this requirement is present, and I actually looked at a study of publishers which say what are the requirements, and kind of in this sort of thematic analysis that we explored, probably the biggest thing was that these requirements are subject to change, and they will be changing, and some publishers have actually already changed this and now no longer require a statement acknowledging the use of AI tools if those tools have been used only to adjust grammar and spelling and sort of the wording. So there's already a move away from this use of reporting. I do think it's important to recognize, though, when there's different uses of AI, because just saying I've used AI tools in this paper is very different depending upon where you do it. Well, have you done that for your data analysis? Have you done that for your literature review? Have you done that for your writing up? Whereabouts are you using AI, and how are you using AI? So I think the big thing here is to make it clear to the reader where it's being used and why it's being used. So, you're saying you've been using it for some text generation, fine. As long as you are willing to put your name to what's come out of that AI tool, I don't really see a problem with that. You've done the background work, everything, you've checked it, this is fine. There's other people I know, and some people in our research groups who probably disagree with me, but I think that's totally appropriate. If we talk about things like data analysis, though, that's where we have to be maybe a little bit more careful, because maybe the tools aren't quite there. I've done some experimentation on using Gen AI tools for doing qualitative analysis and finding some really interesting things, but also finding that the tools will just completely make stuff up. Like, can you give me a quote demonstrating this theme? Absolutely. Here's a quote from this participant. And I'm looking through all my data sets. I'm like, where's that quote from? Completely made up. So these issues with hallucinations, I think, will go away. We've got to be cautious that we're not getting stuck into this mindset of, AI tools are ChatGPT 3.5, because we're already beyond that and we're already moving away from that. Yes, there's challenges with using these tools for research purposes, but I think that as we get further and further into the next 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to see some big changes in how AI is used for research.
Thank you, Mike. I will add one more question. I think we can make it as teachers, to teach students how to use artificial intelligence. Educators must learn how to use AI. That's what we discussed, and that's what Diana is asking. So many educators either do not do so because they are unwilling, or because they do not know how, or don't have any chance how to do that. So who should lead this new training landscape for educators? Mary, could you start?
So I kind of feel it might be us, because I think something that has happened is that the academic integrity community, wherever you are, the academic integrity people, however we're called, have tended to be leaned on very heavily in terms of, well, what do we do about AI? In fact, I've got someone, so I'm the Integrity Matters blog editor. I've got someone writing a blog, How I Became the AI Guy. So academic integrity is sort of experts. Our knowledge is really needed now in terms of guiding people with with artificial intelligence. I think that's happening. But of course, really, it's the job of everyone. everyone's got to jump into this new space and help each other establish communities of practice to move forward with artificial intelligence. I think that's the way it has to go.
It was very nice for me to say that it's everyone's job, because it's the title of the event, which will be next week. So we would definitely recommend everyone to join and have all hands on deck and try and help us support academic integrity around the world. I would like to thank you all. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing all your expertise. I would like to thank all the participants for joining us today and to having wonderful questions. We will definitely try to answer them via email if it's going to be possible to reach out to you. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.